Live from the Slightly Twisted Deck Bar, it's the Poojie Podcast with Justin Lemie.
The Poojie Podcast is proudly sponsored by Cimarron Golf Club, located in Jacksonville, Florida, off County Road 210, just west of St. John's Parkway.
Welcome to this special edition of the Poojie Podcast. Here I am sitting in my own makeshift tribal council set, similar to Jeff Probst in his garage just a week ago when he sat in Los Angeles and read the final votes for the final episode of season 40. If you're not a fan of Survivor or never watched, I beg of you to please watch. It's a very exciting show, once a week, Wednesday nights typically. Social game, strategy game, all of the above, great drama. If you watch Big Brother, if you watch Amazing Race, it's a similar type show, just kind of out in the wilderness about survival, building relationships, and so on. So the finale for the season 40 Winners at War was this past week on Wednesday, and I have a panel of Survivor fans, diehards here to kind of go through what happened in this finale and maybe some of the stuff that happened during the season that led up to this finale. So again, if you haven't watched the show, please listen to this. Maybe we'll spark some excitement for you to go back and watch. If you have watched the show, please listen to this and let us know what your thoughts are on how we kind of recapped what the finale was. So Winners at War, for those that don't know, all the winners from past seasons came back to play for their second, third, sometimes fourth time. So here we go. I'm going to welcome in the panel to kind of jump in the discussion. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Yo, what's up?
Thank you.
How you doing, fans out there?
For sure. So we kind of had an interesting twist in this season, which we've seen in previous seasons. It's gone from Exile Island, Edge of Extinction, Redemption Island. There's been different twists, different names for it. So Edge of Extinction, I think, came back for the second time this year, where when you got voted off, you went to an island almost as a layover area, and then you got an opportunity to battle back into the game. And we've had some controversy with this twist in the game in the past, but take me through some of y'all's thoughts in any order that you guys want to go. Just what you guys think about Edge of Extinction, how you guys think that Survivor handles it. Jacob, maybe we'll start with you since you're in my top left.
Yeah, so from the first time they did it, I was a big Rick Devens fan, and that kind of hurt him, the Edge of Extinction did. I feel like it's a great twist. I think the opportunity to go home or choose to go to the island is a great twist, because then people can battle back to come back in and have a second chance. So those early cast-offs, their road's not necessarily over. I personally am not a huge fan of that second battle back being so late. I think for someone that maybe was on Edge of Extinction for a long time and wasn't in the actual game, I think they need to come back a little sooner so that way they can give more actual game moves on the actual island of Survivor to impress me. I think it's very hard to sit out there, but I think I want that second battle back to be pushed earlier instead of like with only 5 people left.
Yeah, and Teachy, I know you've been watching the show for quite some time as well, and we've had some conversations about how the game has evolved over the past seasons. I guess in your opinion, has the evolution of the game been good or bad for the overall purity of the game as far as Edge of Extinction goes? Is it something that you enjoy being a fan from, basically day one, watching those older seasons and seeing how the seasons have unfolded in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I really like the idea of Redemption Island, but you got to kind of do it right. I think what Jacob was kind of just talking about when Rick Devens was on, you got voted out, and that was really just the end of it. As we're now, you get voted out, you have an opportunity with the new fire tokens being added into it. I mean, that's kind of what I give Natalie a very good advantage. She was the first one out. She was there the entire time, and she had, 16, 17 coins just building up the entire time. And at the end, it kind of wasn't even fair with that final challenge. So at the same time, it's like, yeah, when do you bring them in, or when's the right time to do it? But overall, I do like having the Redemption Island part of it, as long as with the coins, it's good.
Yeah, I will say, and I think your dog agrees with you, but I will say that as far as the twists go, it almost felt like this season the producers had a lot of twists in mind, and they just said, you know what, we're just going to throw them all out there in one season and see how the best players handle it. And let's see what they do. But Nick, I want to go to you next. I know you've recently taken the time during this quarantine to kind of watch some past seasons of Survivor. So you kind of got
just a few. just a
Yeah,
few.
right. You got familiar with a lot of these players from their first seasons, sometimes their second seasons. I guess how have you seen the game evolve in watching those first few seasons of the show to now watching season 40, 20 years down the road?
So it's actually pretty incredible, the evolution of the game. Like, it's, you know, you get to talk about old school players and new school players, and, you know, how they're different game styles and the evolution of the game. And you don't really, I feel like as a fan, if you watched real time, you wouldn't really truly appreciate and see the changes over time. But like you're saying, I binge watched a lot of Survivor, like basically 30 seasons of Survivor in a matter of a month or two. And in like early seasons 10, 11, 12, 13, like Immunity Idol, it was the first time it's being introduced. And there was this one that would last the whole season. It was able to be played after the votes, all these crazy things. The tribe swaps weren't a thing. They did like the reward challenge. They did a challenge where they had to like wrestle and fight and like tackle each other. And the reward was like a sewing kit. That was one of the weirdest things that I've ever seen back in the old school Survivor. And then like now the challenges are way more elaborate. You know, there's like 3-4 tribe swaps in the one season. You know, there's like all these twists and turns, and Redemption Island and Exile Island and Immunity Idols here and there, and all these different things, blocking and steal a vote and all these crazy things. And the evolution of the game has really, really, and then it all came to like a front in this 40 season. Like, I think it was Tisha that said it, or Jacob that said it, that all the twists in this one season were all coming out with the fire tokens and with the leave vote and all these crazy things. And it was definitely exciting to watch. And it also made this season that much more exciting, because if you like wanted to get into a good season of Survivors to jump in, this would be a good one. But knowing all the characters of all the people who won, that was another cool part about it. Like knowing each face, and it being recent, not just like, oh, I watched that guy like 10, 15 years ago. Like, I remember him. I literally watched him last month, you know?
Yeah.
So it was cool to see them all right back in there. So that was exciting. That was cool.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that takes me to Jorge. I know, Jorge, you've always mentioned one of your favorite survivors was winner of Survivor Africa, Ethan. And Ethan came back and was one of the oldest Survivor, I guess, winners to re-enter the game at this stage in season 40. And for a lot of these survivors, I mean, you look at Boston Rob, you look at Amber, you look at Parvati even, one of the fan favorites from a few seasons through her time. This might have been their, for lack of a better term, last dance, as everyone's been recently watching with Michael Jordan. But what have you thought about Ethan's, I guess, he didn't really get an opportunity to play much of a game this time, but from his time back in Survivor Africa to his time now, what was it about him that kind of brought you back into watch season 40? And how do you think the old type of game players were affected by this new type of game with all these different twists?
You know, it's really interesting because I know I've said this before. Like, I remember seeing like the first 3 to 4 seasons of Survivor. Like, it was an everyday thing. It was at a time where it was airing on Thursday nights instead of Wednesday. And to see how much things have changed and how like the game has changed, like overall, what really got me in to seeing season 40 was, I mean, you got to look at it. Season 40, Winners at War. And I remember I was at work one day, and Sydney actually texted me. She's like, hey, your boy Ethan got voted out. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, Ethan, your favorite survivor. He's like, is he like still playing? She's like, yeah, it's Winners at War. And I was like, oh my gosh, and he got voted out? And she's like, yeah, but he's an Edge of Extinction. And she was telling me this stuff that I've never even heard of, like, from Survivor, like Edge of Extinction, tokens. Like, I was just like, okay, I think I need to get back in the game of Survivor, especially
So you fell
like,
off of Survivor, like you stopped watching for a bit of time?
Yeah, like I don't know what happened. Like, I just started watching Survivor, and then all of a sudden I just like stopped watching it. But what got me back into it was actually Ethan, like, because I've always said to myself, like, anyone says, oh, I watch Survivor, it's like, yeah, Ethan's my favorite guy. Like that, like he's like my ultimate survivor. And getting back into the game, it just like made me fall in love with it even more again. And I was just like, man, like I remember seeing Boston Rob and Amber at the finale to see who won. And then Boston Rob like actually like proposed to Amber. And then in Africa, seeing Ethan win Survivor, like just seeing all the people that I've seen before, like from the first couple of seasons back at like season 40, it's just a phenomenal game. And I can see that the strategy and the game itself in Survivor has changed. I mean, you're right about one thing. I didn't get to see Ethan. I mean, I don't think none of us got to see Ethan like do a lot in Survivor, like in my point of view, but in Edge of Extinction, I felt like, I got to see a lot more. And like, especially like how he got to, I think what the most inspiring thing from him was just like him having cancer, fighting it, and then coming back to play Survivor.
Yeah.
And putting his
Real
health
quick,
on the line.
Jorge, for those that aren't aware of that, so Ethan had cancer, used Survivor as a platform to earn money towards cancer research, and then the money that he earned in that cancer research fund was actually used to find the cure for his blood disease, which allowed him to continue life. So for those that aren't aware of the story, it's a pretty amazing story of redemption, ends up on Redemption Island and coming back into the game of Survivor so many years later. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I did just want to hit on.
No, you're good.
That is
No, absolutely. Like I said, just coming back into Survivor and watching season 40, it just like, I don't know what it did, but it just motivated me and said, wow, like why did I stop? Like I need to keep going. Like I'm already excited for season 41.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping if Jeff, I hope Jeff is watching this podcast later on and, say, hey, I know that guy. He applied to Survivor. I'm ready, Jeff. I'm telling you right now. I'm going to be your next Tony, hopefully. I don't want to get cocky.
Well,
Hey,
we like
he
that.
wants to be your next Tony. This guy, he wants to be your next Nick, right? That's what I'm trying to do.
Did he get voted out?
Okay.
Ah.
You know what? I guess you could say it that way.
Well, that's good confidence there, Jorge. I mean, I'd love to see anyone of my friends get on the show. I think that'd be really exciting to watch, whether it's Survivor or even Big Brother. It'd be great to see. But just to take us through real quick, the finale episode, obviously a lot of moving parts, was 3 hours, which was both a double-edged sword kind of.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah,
I do want to say something about that. So one thing about the finale that I found super awesome this year, and it was something that I don't even think was done on purpose. Usually when you have the reunion, it's a 2-hour finale, and then you have that 1-hour reunion show where, it's talking and like getting back together and like all the controversy or the things that happened that year, that's what they're talking about. But because of the quarantine and the way they didn't have a live audience, they didn't come up on stage, they weren't talking to everybody. I really think that last hour that would have been a reunion show, we got extra Survivor to watch during that time, which I thought was super cool. And it ended up being a plus, I think, that was not, accounted for. But we had a whole extra hour of Survivor to watch because it wasn't a reunion show, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that Survivor fans kind of starve for, since it is a taped show, unlike Big Brother. There isn't the opportunity to do live feeds. There isn't the opportunity to do multiple shows a week of live footage. So I think what a lot of fans struggle with is they want to see more, and that extra hour in that finale was what that kind of gave us. But you start the episode off kind of with that battle back challenge, which Natalie wins, which Teachy mentioned she had 3 advantages simply in that one challenge, plus a hidden immunity idol once she got back into the game, if she were to so do that. So she starts the Edge of Extinction battle back. She's struggling, but she has enough of an advantage to kind of overcome those challenges, and she ends up winning at the very last second. I think Wendell was the runner-up in that challenge. He had 1 ball left to place on the board before she did. So Natalie re-enters the game and kind of rekindles a friendship that she had with Michelle, knowing Michelle was on the outs of a 4-person alliance with Tony, Sarah, Ben, and Denise. Natalie kind of opens up to Michelle about her own hidden immunity idol. And then luckily for Natalie, Michelle goes on to win individual immunity in the very next challenge, coming from behind herself to win. So both of them were protected, but I do want y'all's opinion if one or two of you want to chime in. If you find a hidden immunity idol in Survivor, is it worth telling someone about it, or would you keep it 100% to yourself no matter what, if they were in your alliance or not?
I'll tell you this one real quick. When I find out immunity idol, who am I going to tell in this situation? Who can I trust? Like, I felt like it was really brave of her to actually go to Michelle, but I felt like she could actually trust Michelle, because I don't know. If you look at it when she came back, immediately she looks at Tony and says, thanks for voting me out. Like, and that's where I feel like she knew what was going on and knew who she had to go to.
Yeah,
I don't remember her and Michelle like speaking in the beginning of Survivor. I know it was like her and Jeremy because they've worked together, and then she was voted out. But I feel like she knew who she had to tell, and I feel like that was more of like a gut instinct.
yeah,
Bouncing off what Jorge said about the idols is that who do you trust? Like you really you want to go. Everybody at home, it's crazy. Everyone at home is always like, "Oh, you don't tell me. Why do they always tell about the idols?" You want to keep that a secret. But I think it's so hard to be in the game and actually be like, you have these allies. You're trying to create trust. You're trying to turn things. You wouldn't do things the way you would do it sitting on your couch at home. Like when you're in it, it's so different. Like
yeah.
you really want to tell someone. You want to be able to have that trust. But it's crazy because every single time someone tells, it always comes back. Like that person's your ally right now. Like me and you are talking. We're allies today. This game changes on a dime. 2 days later, who's not to say that it's either you or me on the block? And now that person's like, well, I know he has an idol and we were allies, but it's either my head or his. Hey guys, he has an idol. Let's flush it out. Let's vote him out. And now that person who's on your ally, who only one person knows, now the whole entire, tribe knows, and you just shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
But again, you can't predict that. You never know. The game changes on a dime, and it's hard to trust people like that.
Yeah, and I think two things. I think also it's a pride thing, and I think when you're in the moment, you kind of want people to know about it because you almost want to feel like you're better than they are. Like, oh, look what I was able to find and not you. So it's almost like a feather in the cap. Like, oh, look what I have. Like, I found the idol, you didn't. And then I think the second thing is, would you want to keep it a secret and then the secret come out and then one of your alliance members look at you and say,
yeah, that's big. I agree with that.
Why didn't you tell me from the beginning? Now I don't trust you. So it's definitely a weird situation, which then leads us to our next challenge in which Tony ends up winning, which first time I'm really mentioning Tony tonight, ironically enough. Tony ends up winning the sandbag tossing challenge, which then gets him immunity, almost pretty much guaranteeing him into the Final Four at that point after Denise got voted out over Sarah in the previous tribal. So Tony gets into the Final Four. Well, now the remaining four people to vote for are Michelle, Natalie, Ben, and Sarah, in a very interesting emotional twist in the game here. And I'd like to hear maybe Teachy's thought on this. Ben kind of
is this the part where Ben goes home? Is this the episode where Ben goes home?
Yeah. So Ben kind of lays on the sword for Sarah and says, "Oh, I want you to vote me out because I think that would be a great move for your game." And albeit a very strong message of woman empowerment from Sarah's speech just a night beforehand. What is your take? Would you ever take yourself out of the game willingly? Do you think this was a move that was made simply because he'd already played the game before? Why kind of lay on the sword and give up your spot in the game to save an alliance member of yours?
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting because it just seemed like Ben at the end just gave up. And why would you go all that way just what it made it seem like you gave up? But I mean, I saw some interesting posts where like, well, was that really more of Sarah's, out trying to outplay or outsmart or outwit? Was that really her being, maybe she thought she was going to be the one voted out and she kind of flip the script and was able to get Ben to just say, hey, let me just get out. And she's like, all right, I'll move on to the next one. But that was just a very awkward moment. But I mean, I was excited for Tony to still stay alive because let's just face it, if he did not win it, he was out.
And something just for people to understand, pretty much what Sarah said was when Natalie ended up coming back from Edge of Extinction, she came back into the game and told everyone else, hey, the jury is voting for Tony if he gets to the end. And Sarah took that the wrong way, feeling I'm not getting my credit in this game for making the moves that I have made because I'm a woman. And she brought up a lot of good points as far as that was concerned, as in when a woman makes a move that maybe betrays someone, she's looked at negatively, maybe not in the best light. But when a male makes that move, the same exact move, they're looked as a savage. They're looked at as a big threat in the game, a powerful player. So I think Sarah brought up a lot of good points. And the one thing that I enjoyed was Jeff kind of recognizing that and admitting it himself, saying, I've shown biases over the past seasons of only calling males by their last name, only identifying certain moves.
That was a cool moment.
Right?
And
then Jeff starts calling Sarah by her last name. So it was just a cool moment there. And then maybe Ben was emotionally caught up in the whole situation and he falls on the sword for that. So I think that was interesting. Jacob, did you have something to say there as well? Or
I just thought that moment was interesting because if it was a real shame to me. I was a big Tony fan and Tony supporter, and he had a very good gut instinct that Natalie came in with something. He's like, I don't know if she did, but like we have to think maybe she does. And he wanted to, put their votes on Denise, who ended up going home anyway, and hopefully saving their idols. Unfortunately, he had to use it on himself because he just wasn't sure because, Ben and Sarah weren't going to believe that. They're like, there's no way she could come in with something. And it made me think that following vote, when, Ben goes home, it's like they all could have been safe right now because we're at a final 5. That's when they could have used their idols. But part of me also wonders if that trio stayed together all the way through finale night, would he have had an easier win the way it happened versus them actually all getting there? So I almost want to say maybe it happened for a reason and it was good for Tony, but it was a shame that they didn't believe him because they think he's just wild and crazy, but sometimes his wild and crazy antics are pretty spot on.
And Jacob, you bring up a really good point there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a constant question that a lot of Survivor fans ask is it better to take a weaker group of people to the finale and then almost guarantee the win as long as no one pulls something out, and kind of steals some votes? Or is it better to stay loyal and take your alliance members with you? And it's really funny you mentioned that because I think about 4 or 5 seasons ago, we saw Woo win the final immunity challenge, and he opted to actually take Tony to the finale. And that was the season where Tony ended up winning Survivor, even though had Woo taken Trish, Woo would have been guaranteed the victory. So it is a constant question, and it's funny you brought that up in this season because now it was kind of Tony was faced almost with that situation, which Tony wasn't cakewalking into the third or into the final 3 because then we go to the final immunity challenge in which Natalie ends up winning there with the they call it Samotion is what the challenge is called. One hand tied behind your back. You have to catch various pool ball looking cue ball, white ball things at various intervals. And Natalie made a few great saves in that, challenge, makes it to the final 3, and then is faced with one of the biggest challenges that has entered the Survivor world over the last 2 seasons. Do you enter the fire making challenge to take out the biggest threat, or do you go to the final 3 because you earned that final immunity? So what are some of y'all's thoughts on that?
So real quick, we've been talking a lot about Redemption Island, but I feel like there hasn't been a full explanation of it. And this is very important in this aspect of the conversation we're having. So for those who may not know fully, Redemption Island, every person that got voted out went to this island, every single person. And in the middle of the game, all those people that got voted out came back to compete to come back into the game, and only one person got to come back. And then from that point on, you would think that those people like got to go home or whatever, but no, they actually went back to that island after that point where that person came in. And again, every person that continued to get voted out from that point all the way up to like 5 people left in the game, another person who was able to come back into the game. So if you were the first person voted out of the game and you stayed on that island for 30 something plus days, and at that point when it's time to battle back in, you can come back in, people looked at it as like, well, and in fact, that is the very situation that happened. The controversy of, is it fair that a person was able to do that? My opinion, and this is where the whole conversation starts, my opinion is I think it is fair. It's part of the game. It's, it's the cards you're dealt. This person
Nick, what's an interesting thought about that, though? Of the 6 people that have come back in the game from Redemption Island, the immediate tribal council, not a single vote went for those 6 returning players. Isn't that a little weird? You think that would be the first person you'd want to get out, having that information with? Because you really think about it, Natalie could have had the best relationship with anyone on that jury, saying that she was there for 30 days, got to talk to them every single day, and you weren't having to worry about, do I got to vote off this person or Redemption Island? No, you say, hey, how was your day? Oh, okay, let's work together to get the fire tokens today.
It's a very much different environment.
I think that's where Natalie messed up, though, because Poojie, you're right. It's important to play the game, but it's important to form those relationships on that island. I felt like she was still upset that she was the first one voted off. Like, you could see everyone on Extinction Island just getting along, talking, laughing, and you'll see Natalie there. But I felt like she should have built that relationship with everyone else if she had a chance to get back in the game, she would already have in the back of her mind, I've done my part with the jury. But I felt like that wasn't done. And that's what kind of cost her at the same time.
Yeah, and
maybe
I
she maybe knew Tony was winning already too. She knew Tony was having that game, But
I think that's one of the interesting things is when you are on the Redemption Island, Edge of Extinction, Exile Island, whatever it is, you do get to form those relationships with the jury. You are literally sitting there with the people that are going to be voting to end the game. You can make up stories. You can tell them sob stories about your life at home, reasons you need the money. You can literally develop these connections that people within the game don't have the opportunity to do because they are playing the pure form of Survivor, which is stay in the game as long as I can without getting voted out. So what I'm really curious about is if Survivor ends up changing to become a Redemption Island consistent type game, will people start playing to the point where they say, let me go to Redemption and start building these relationships because I haven't done enough yet in the game to win? Let me go to Redemption and start building relationships with members in the jury. So, I mean, we've seen the game evolve to this point in where we're standing in season 40, entering 41. I wonder if the player strategies are going to continue to evolve with time and maybe see Redemption play a bigger role in that. But Jacob, if you want to jump in real quick, maybe tell your thoughts on Redemption and Natalie re-entering the game at the point she did and the decisions she had to make within that short period of time of her being on the island.
Well, I'll preface my comment on the Edge of Extinction with this. I love Natalie. When she was on her original season, I was a big fan of her, and I was really glad she won. On this season, she was the first one voted out, but I felt she played a great game on the edge. She definitely hustled the most. But I do feel a little torn with the whole edge being brought in so late because I truly believe at the core of Survivor, the winner should be someone that, lasted in the actual game for the 39 full days. She worked her butt off. I will say that. And she did a lot more than most of those other people did. I feel like she also maybe benefited. I think Teachy spoke about this sometime during the year, that she benefited from being there the longest as well. We saw when there was one riddle that came up and whoever found it had, an advantage they found. She knew exactly where it was. Wendell actually sprinted past her, headed up the mountain because he was sure it was up there. And she was like, wow, what an idiot. I know it's at this little rock right here. And she found it because of her knowledge. So I think she definitely played a great game on that. But my thing with this is, you outwit, outlast, outplay. And outlast, I feel if you got voted out the very first vote, it's tough to say you outlasted. Now, they did stay on edge. They did endure a very rough, camp, if it's not worse than the actual camp. But they weren't dodging the weekly votes the same as much as they were just strategizing. What am I going to do when I come in? So the thing is, she got in. She did what she could at coming back in that last show. The one thing she couldn't do was get Tony out, and that's where do we see her do what Chris did in his season, where he just goes right after the top front runner and go to fire? Because if she goes to fire with him, then that's where you have a big decision of, okay, who are we going to pick? I still probably would have voted for Sarah because I'm a fan of the people that stayed there the full 39 days, but that would have been the move, I feel like, to try to really help her seal the deal.
And for those that might not understand what going to fire means, pretty much what it means is the person that wins the last immunity challenge gets to pick one other player in the final four to go with them to the final three. The remaining two players then have to make a fire and burn a rope at a certain height, and the winner of that is then the third person in the final three. So that's what going to fire means. And a few seasons ago, we saw Chris take Rick Devens to fire and beat Rick Devens. Chris went on to win Survivor after coming back from Redemption. So there was some controversy there. But at the same time, and I know Nick has brought this up before, it's about playing your best game with the time that you're given. And if it's a rule within the game, it's really difficult to not respect the plays that happen once they do return back into the game. So I guess my thing is we've seen Survivor played a lot of different ways, and we've seen it evolve, and we've seen the producers try and make it an exciting game day in and day out and not be repetitive. And I think that's where we're at right now. We're in a weird little gray area of Survivor purists really liking the old form of Survivor, and maybe some more modern day Survivor fans liking the new twists and turns. But to finish off what happened in the finale, it goes to fire. Tony ends up beating Sarah, and what I would call one of the best fire-making challenges in Survivor history.
Most
100%.
nail biting.
100%.
Yeah, it was.
So it was very right for the 40th season.
Yeah, it was a crazy ending, and Tony ends up making it. And I think at that point, Tony felt bad sending his partner in crime out the door, but I think Tony knew he won the $2 million at that point, winning in a vote of 12-4. So that's how the finale ended, with Tony winning the $2 million and the Winners at War crown. Now people calling him the Survivor King. And we saw Sandra, the Survivor Queen, get voted out for the first time in her Survivor career.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, this episode or this season. So a little bit of a changing of the guards, I think some would say, with now there being two-time winners of the show. So any other thoughts from you guys about maybe the fire tokens, some of the twists and turns, things that you'd like to see stick around, things that you maybe think the show could do without? What are some things that you guys like?
I think. Oh, Nick, go ahead. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just gonna make quick. I thought the fire tokens was such an incredible addition to this season. There's always trying to add these different twists and different things, and the fire tokens was such a smart thing to add. Like, it was like trading, and they didn't even fully understand how or what or where these fire tokens were coming from, or how they were affecting the game on redemption, on the exile, or on the regular side. It just was a really interesting purchasing, currency type thing to add to the game.
And I think, just keeping with the fire tokens thing, I think it's an interesting concept. If they keep the edge of extinction, I feel the whole fire token, thing makes sense to continue. But let's say the next season doesn't have an edge. Do they still integrate the fire tokens, but maybe it's not someone that left the game that's somehow re-entering the fire tokens to be won?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if they do keep that twist in the game, if those kind of become like the new hidden immunity idols, like if those will eventually hold the power, or I guess a collective group of them, 3 or 4 of them, you can buy immunity at Tribal, something along those lines, where does that now become the new immunity idol, where people are out in the middle of the night searching for a fire token instead of maybe an immunity idol? Because what we've seen in Survivor, we've seen the Survivor auction, so we've seen them have that kind of style during the season. So is this going to turn into a thing where everyone knows at Tribal Council people can, maybe pay 3 tokens for an extra vote, or 4 tokens for immunity, or 5 tokens for immunity after the votes are read? So is that what this could become, in y'all's opinion, that currency? But on Nick's point, I also like the idea that they had no idea what the tokens were going to be used for. They were just kind of thrown into the game, and no one knew what their value was.
So you said something that kind of piqued my interest there, and Justin, I was like, wow, that makes sense. So the search for the hidden immunity idols has become so common and so part of the game now, that the moment one is used at Tribal, they're back at camp and they don't even go to sleep. They just go straight to searching for these idols, and they're found within 5 hours, another one is found. I think if they made it where, like you just said, where now they're hiding fire tokens, so you can find a fire token, but you need 2 or 3 of them to buy an idol. So everyone may be searching, and you may find 1 token, you may find 2 tokens, but you're not going to be able to just go out, find the hidden immunity idol, and then bam, now you've got it. You know what I mean? That's actually something that maybe they can turn it into something like that. I think that would be very cool, actually.
After watching, Survivor from the beginning and then coming in to season 40, that's a huge leap jump. I'm going to be honest with you. It's a huge leap jump.
It is a big leap jump. It has been a lot of changes.
That's what I'm saying. But to come in and then, I'm just the guy sitting on the couch. I'm like, all right, the game is still the same. We're on an island. We got immunity challenges. What could possibly, have changed? And I'm looking. I got Jeff talking about, Edge of Extinction and fire tokens. And I'm just like, what is going on here?
Just to be clear, Jorge, what is the last one you watched? Did you just literally you just started watching 40 from the last one you watched?
Yeah, all right, so I'm telling you, it all started Thursday nights was burger nights, and it was my mom and I watching Survivor. She's the one that got me into the show. Real talk. I was like, Mom, get the burgers on the grill. It's Thursday night. We're watching Survivor. And I know I watched season 1. I think season 1 was with Tina. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like when Tina won.
I didn't go back that far, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like I know, like when I started watching 1, 2, and I know I fell in love with 3.
Richard something. What season 1 something? Richard.
I think what I
Cash.
told Justin was the last time I watched Survivor. I'm gonna bring a throwback here. The last time I watched Survivor was when Rupert was in the game. And that was
Rupert. Yes, Rupert was a good guy. That was a good guy.
There's been like a couple times where like I've seen Survivor, like just watching clips on YouTube and stuff like that, and like top 10 immunity challenges or all these other things on YouTube. Like I've recognized myself with some of the characters, but to actually sit down through a whole season of Survivor on live television, this was the first year, and I'm so glad I did it because I was just so pumped.
Wow! So since Rupert all the way till season 40, that's pretty crazy.
It is.
Something else I do think that's interesting, and Nick, you brought it up earlier, the earlier seasons had a lot more like physicality and maybe physically demanding challenges.
A lot more social. The social game was so much. It was a very different. Like you stuck to your tribe. You did like you were saying, these physical challenges. Like you went to battle, and like you'd come back, and when it came to tribes, like the merge, like your 4 were your 4.
Yeah.
Those like it was 4v5. Like there was no like. Ooh, like flipper. There was no like. It was I'm my tribe. Your tribe. We're merged, but we're still going at it just like this.
Yeah,
and it truly evolved over time.
What's interesting though is because this was Winners at War, and this was a lot of well-known celebrities, I guess at this point coming back into the game. I wonder how many discussions were had before the season of, hey, we're not going to have as many physical challenges. We're not going to be as physically demanding because we want some of the best players to come back and be comfortable coming back.
And not to get hurt.
Let's be real. Of all the people that have come back, right, not many of them are known as like physical threats in the game as far as like, the water challenges and the wrestling challenges. A lot of them were known for their social games and, their strategies. Jeremy, he was a pretty big physical threat in his few seasons that he played. Jeremy was a good one. But for the most part, we didn't see a lot of players come back that were known for making it far because of their physical abilities. What was interesting is Tony finally found a way to start winning immunity challenges, and he wins 4, so he's 1 shy of the record for Survivor in a single season. And he ends up winning, these immunity necklaces. Did that help him keep calm during these camp sessions to where he didn't have to scatter and be paranoid and run around? Because we've seen in his past seasons that's kind of caught up to him a few times, where this time he's just chilling there with an immunity necklace. He doesn't necessarily have to worry as much. So that's just another interesting thing I'd like to point out.
2 of Tony's biggest moves this season, in my opinion, happened 2 votes in a row, and it was because he had that necklace around his necklace around his neck, those 2 tribals. And on top of that, he found, with editing, I don't know how like in a row these things happen, but he found an idol right after the merge on top of winning individual immunity. So he felt like, okay, I'm safe tonight. I have this idol, so I'm safe for next week. I can make a big move.
I'm glad you brought that up, Nick, because I kind of want to end it on that note because we're up against it. But I think at the end of the day, you can enter all these twists into the game. But at the end of the day, I think the purity of Survivor really comes out to the forefront. And when you have that immunity necklace, there's very few things that are going to, I guess, trump having that necklace, because that comfortability level, the power that it holds, because now everyone's running to you with information. And Tony had that 4 times in this game, gathering information that he maybe not necessarily would have had otherwise. But we'll see what they do with season 41. Hopefully they get that underway here on TV shortly. I know we definitely could all use that, but I definitely appreciate you guys jumping on and discussing the finale with us. Again, for those at home, if you don't watch Survivor, I definitely recommend watching it. And for season 41, we'll do some more recap videos throughout the season to kind of keep everyone up to date with what's going on. And definitely go back and watch season 40 if you're at home for a few more weeks with this pandemic going on. Definitely go back and watch season 40. It's worth it.
Or go back and watch all of them, like me. Whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna go watch season 3 where Ethan wins.
Yeah. So it's interesting. But again, guys, thanks for being here. Poojie, I like your Survivor shirt. I like that.
Yeah, thank you, man.
The only authentic Survivor thing we have here. All right, guys. Thanks.